Guys, in this interview, I'm going to interview two of the core members from Big Time. This team, this game is going to be absolutely massive. They've experienced from Gears of War, Fort Nite, Electronic Arts. In fact, the CTO was even responsible for building Unreal Engine. Let's get into it. Let's bring on the guests. Let's go. Okay, guys, welcome to another episode. We got a couple amazing guests on the show tonight from Big Time. We got Matt, who is the CTO, and Ryan, who's the Director of Growth. Guys, thank you so much for coming on. I'm really excited to hear all about Big Time and dive into some details. Either one of you, please just kind of give us an overview of what Big Time is.
Big Time really is a game that we're producing and with the goal of being a AAA mass market appeal game that anyone can pick up and play, whether you're already ensconced in the blockchain world or not. Big Time is going to be entertaining and engaging for anyone that's into games, and especially for people that are into blockchain games, of course. But really what we're trying to do is build an experience that attracts those gamers that just want to play a cool action RPG. We're kind of going for 20% World of Warcraft, 80% Diablo style universe that's, has all the same sort of mechanics and combat loops that you'd see in those games. But also has this really intriguing and interesting on-ramp into the blockchain world. So that's kind of what Big Time is in a nutshell and what we're trying to do with it. But I guess to summarize more succinctly, it should just be a really cool, fun to play game.
Awesome. Can you tell us a little bit about the team behind Big Time? I think it's probably one of the reasons that people are the most excited about this.
Yeah, so the founder, his name is Ari, and he was actually the one that founded Decentraland a couple years back. And Thor is a CPO, and he pioneered MMOs at EA and also helped scale Zynga to a very large company with a portfolio of games of over 20 million monthly active users. And then Matt.
Yeah, so my background is from video game development. I come from a few different studios through my career, but probably the ones the best are companies like Epic Games, where I worked on the Gears of War franchise, and later worked on the first version of Fort Nite, kind of the prototype team there. And then before that, I was working on Electronic Arts, actually with Thor back in the day. So that's kind of where we met. But I've since leaving Epic also worked at a few startups, kind of struck out on my own and joined the startup world. And that's how I got hooked up with Big Time.
Yeah, we also have Tom, and he's our lead concept artist, and he worked on League of Legends at Riot, and TJ, our lead level designer, who worked on like Call of Duty, and Aaron and Martin, our art directors and principal engineers, who worked on Fortnite and Gears of War respectively.
They both worked on Fortnite and Gears of War actually with me, so the band's all back together.
Awesome. That's really cool to see that you guys have done something before, mostly as a team together, some new people in the team as well, a lot of blockchain experience in there as well, coming from Ari's background. How long has Big Time been in development?
About a year now, or I guess a little bit more than a year. Depends on how you count it, I guess. We had some early prototype efforts before that, and of course, Decentraland, a lot of the knowledge that came from Decentraland is kind of being utilized in the new production. So some of it, so the genesis of it anyway came from way back in Decentraland days. But I'd say really we've been in production or actively working on the game as it is now for about a year, a little bit more than that.
And when do you guys expect to have the game out?
Late Q1 next year
for VIP pass holders. So we're kind of going to do a rolling launch approach. So it'll be available to people with passes starting in, like Ryan said, in Q1 in 2022, and then we'll be successively adding more content and features and rolling it out to more and more people over the following months until not very long later in 2022. It'll be available for everybody in the public, but still kind of in early access mode as we bring more systems online and add features to the game.
With that being said, is there a play to earn mechanic in the game?
So it's actually, you can kind of think about it as like two forms of playing. So there is the side that you don't have to spend any money, you don't have to buy anything. You can enjoy the full scope of the storyline and still have a really solid experience. That's kind of like the fundamentals of the game design and the core game loop that the developers are looking for. And then there is something called space. And so space has a direct correlation for how a player can acquire the token. So kind of like the idea behind it would be that like acquire space through the marketplace or through gameplay. And then you need to find a game timekeeper, or you buy one and you have to install it on your space. And then from there, the timekeeper allows you to craft an hourglass. And then whenever you play the game with the hourglass in hand, when you kill like bosses or finish dungeons, you're able to kind of acquire the tokens. And so this hourglass has no effect on gameplay. It just has more of the more mechanics based on the player-owned economy.
Okay, so interesting. So you mentioned this token. Is this token going to be something that is it going to be available in any type of like public sale, or is this strictly just going to be earned in economy and starting with like a zero supply on day one?
Yeah, so one of the different approaches that we're taking for this is that the token will be 100% community driven, meaning that like no developers will have it, no VCs will have it, and from day one it will only be the players that are able to acquire it. And so from that we expect kind of like a very stable acquisition of it that keeps relatively good value.
This is interesting. So, so what I'm getting at here is that people with the early access pass, will they be able to start earning the token in Q1?
Yeah, that's the plan. So with the pass in hand, you'll get access to the game, and then you'll still have to have the hourglass that Ryan mentioned in order to loot the token off of bosses and creatures inside the game. As we roll it out to more and more people, and the gets later in the year in 2022, we'll have more of these features online. So I'm not 100% sure we'll have all the play to earn mechanics we want to have available on the very first release, but certainly there's also the cosmetic NFTs that will be dropping in the game. So people will be able to loot those from day one. And those are kind of like, I don't know if you've played Path of Exile or any of those sorts of games, it's like an applique that you can use to swap out the visual or audio or the appearance of your character. That doesn't necessarily affect the power of your character, but it makes you like look cooler or have cooler audio or unlock some sort of cool cosmetic element. So those will be dropping from the very beginning for sure. And then as we get closer to that first early access launch, we'll probably announce more details about what play to earn mechanics will be coming with that. The whole point of doing the early access release is to get real users in the game, really interacting with the economy. And so, that's definitely the goal, is to have all of those mechanics online and working so that we can tune the economy and check out and make sure it's fun for everybody and stuff is working how we plan.
Awesome. So are you saying that and can you tell us a little bit about the different passes? You've got like a Jade, what is it? Jade, Gold, and what's the other one? Silver, maybe?
Silver, yeah.
What's the difference between those passes?
It just it depends on when you get to go into the game for when and then acquire the NFTs. So Gold will be first in, and then they'll have kind of like the longest allotment of time, and then you'll have the Silver and you'll have the Jade. But that doesn't necessarily mean that like the Jade is the worst pass. The idea behind it is that like just being in early access gets an early advantage to acquiring some of the limited edition NFTs.
Yeah, I think that's a huge benefit, actually. I mean, obviously, as more and more people come into this game, resources, things that you can earn, find, discover, NFTs, tokens, these will become more scarce and more difficult to find as it becomes more, flooded with people. So it's like a Black Friday event where they had a big, huge line at the door, and they let first 5 people and said, go get whatever you want, and then 20 minutes later let another 20 people in, and then go get whatever you can get, and then 40 minutes later let the rest of the horde. And I guess it's something similar to that. But with that being said, for anyone who's watching this, we're actually going to be giving away a Jade pass. And what I would like to know from you guys, and this is interesting, if you win this Jade pass, let us know in the comments below what you would do with it. And we'll let Ryan or Matt pick the winner. And essentially, I want to see the most creative and interesting comment below, what you would do with the Jade Pass, how you're excited about it. If you're going to do backflips or cartwheels and film it and send it and post it on their Twitter, I don't care. How excited are you for the most ecstatic and interesting and creative comments that we think is genuine. You can't be bullshitting us, right? Genuine comment I want to see below, and we will let Matt and Ryan pick the winner. And guys, one more thing that's important: the last giveaway we did, it was very hard to track down people. So make sure that you include your Twitter handle in the comment below. That way we can find you easily and contact you. Okay. So with that being said, I'm very excited about this. I'm actually going to go out and probably get some more passes myself. I'd like to be able to have access in here to go get some NFTs and tokens and mine this quite early. I'd like to know now more about, like, when I talk to, let's say, Michael from Star Atlas or Dan from Cetus Heroes, he gave me just a bit of insight about all the different things that were possible within the game, that really kind of made it mind-blowing to me. So can you walk through some of the thought that's been put behind Big Time as far as, like, what can you do in the game? You can go battle, you can go mine this, you can build your house, you can travel to different galaxies, you can conquer drug lord, I don't know. Like, just maybe some of the things that gets people's imagination going, because I'm sure you guys have been thinking about this for a very long time.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think the primary thing that people will be doing is going into dungeons, exploring them, because the dungeons themselves are procedurally generated, which means every time you run one of those dungeons, it'll be a little bit different. Not even the developers know exactly what's going to be in there. So each time you're getting a little bit of a fresh experience, and we're really trying to tickle that sense of exploration as you're running around these things, because since it's different every time, you might get a rare loot chest that shows up in the corner of one of these dungeons that isn't there all the time, or like a treasure room that just happens to be in that particular instance of the dungeon. So there's this incentive to make sure that you're paying attention and exploring the world, and not just pushing through it as fast as you can in order to kill the boss or whatever. There's lots of reasons to kind of stop and look around and enjoy the environment. But also you're going to be playing with your friends in a co-op kind of battle space, which in and of itself is very fun, right? There's lots of games that have kind of built their entire experience around this kind of gameplay. And certainly Big Time is doing that, a similar thing there, where you take a game that's pretty fun to play, and you get a group of friends that are playing it together, and they all have to work together, and you make that game suddenly 10 times more fun, or even more. And so we're really trying to capitalize on that aspect of it. So there needs to be a certain amount of challenge involved in order to give those players something to do, and a reason that they need to cooperate. If the game is too easy, you don't really have to communicate, because you can just kind of march through it easy peasy. But also there's kind of an element of strategy to it, with which skills that you're applying to your character, and which characters, indeed, which classes you're choosing to bring along with you in that particular dungeon instance. What classes you have might help you define which creatures you can kill and which areas of the level you can get into. There's certain classes that have different mobility skills that let them get to areas of the level that the others can't. And then in addition to that sort of exploration and just kind of running through the dungeon gameplay like you'd see in Diablo or World of Warcraft or something like that, there's also crafting systems where you can gather resources, again, by exploring the worlds, that are not necessarily going to come from creatures you kill. They might be things that you just find on the ground or harvest from something in the ground. And you can use those crafting materials to come back to the town and build yourself a new item. It could be a new sword, could be some new armor. It could even be like an upgrade for an NFT that you have. A lot of these sort of crafting mechanics will feed into the play to earn system as well. So what we're calling the personal pocket universe, or sometimes referred to as the time machine, which is kind of our take on player housing. But I think in a way that's really cool and unique, is the narrative of the game, or the story of the game, is all kind of playing on time travel and alternate universes. And so why can't you have your own alternate universe? And that's kind of what the personal pocket universe is. It's this space that you can unlock and customize, and you can add to it, you can upgrade it. These space NFTs that we've been talking about are actually kind of segments of this PPU that you can snap together, kind of like Legos. So you can build your own area out however you like, with NFTs that are rooms that are completely wild. If some of them are going to be just a typical room, some of them will be like a beach scene, or a giant you're standing on an asteroid overlooking a big planet being sucked into the sun or something like that. I mean, there's all kinds of crazy stuff we can do because it's an alternate universe, and we're not really bound by the laws of space and time. And we also don't have to that thing doesn't have to fit necessarily in the rest of the universe because you enter a portal, you kind of go into your own space. Yeah, there's a lot of other cool things we want to play with there on the personal pocket universe side, which involve guilds. So we'd love to be. The plan is to have not only your own personal pocket universe, but a guild pocket universe that you and your guild can add to and customize and kind of upgrade as a team. And we also have plans to do things like allowing other players into your own personal pocket universe. So you could have, I mean, obviously you can show off how cool it is, but you could also maybe have like a storefront in there where you're selling your crafting materials, and players can enter your pocket universe or parts of your pocket universe even when you're not online. So you can kind of use that as like your storefront or your personal trophy room, but you give people a reason to come in there because maybe they want to use some of your gear or something like that. So in addition to being able to configure which rooms are in there, you'll also be able to like place, say, furniture or decorations on the wall and all the usual sort of player housing stuff. But some of those may be utility based as well. You know, they might. A lot of those are going to feed into the play to earn flow, where it's not just about putting a chair on the ground that you can sit on and it looks cool, but you might also need to put like some sort of forge or a stove or something like that in one of these rooms that actually unlocks or improves or speeds up the process of your play to earn loop there. So I think that's really the three parts of it is exploration, combat, and looting. And by the way, along the way, when you're looting gear, you're also upgrading your character. You're making choices about what you want your skill tree to be. Typical things that you'd see in an action RPG. But those are kind of tried and true mechanics and very interesting choices that players make along the way. And with the added kind of wrinkle here or interesting change that you're going to be able to fluidly switch between different builds of your character. So if in something like World of Warcraft or even Diablo, you can obviously have more than one character, but the characters are completely separate, right? Like if you switch from your character, your sorceress, and you want to go to your mage or your healer or whatever, you have to like log out of the game, log back into a new character. Change, everything is separate. We're taking an interesting approach here where you're sort of it's like a timeline. It's a alternate version of yourself that you can switch between. So you can actually jump between a fixer class, which is our healer class, or your Chronomancer class, which is our mage class, kind of on the fly, not necessarily willy-nilly wherever you want, but you'll be able to do that in a way that's much easier and quicker to do, and you also get to retain some of that shared inventory space and stuff like that. So you can kind of pick and choose what kind of game you want to play depending on who else is in your party or what you're trying to do at the time. Maybe you're trying to do a speed run and just, you really just want to run all the way to the end and try or run around the dungeon and stealthily and try and look for loot rooms or something like that. You don't want to have to fight all the creatures. You can switch out to your stealth gear, your stealth Shadow Blade builds, something like that. So anyway, I'm probably rambling a lot more than you meant, but those are kind of the main parts.
No, it's interesting. I'm curious about the different classes that you're mentioning. Like, can you give me an example of some different classes and what that means as far as gameplay?
Sure. Yeah. So the four classes we have right now are the Time Warrior, which is kind of your warrior tank, primarily attacking stuff with melee. He's up in the battle, directly against the enemies, kind of taking the hits and giving the hits. We've got the Chronomancer, which, like I mentioned, is kind of our mage class. So a little bit squishier. Mage is something like a caster or a wizard. So somebody that stands off in the background and casts spells from a distance that do a lot of damage typically, or have a big impact on the battle, but they're not necessarily the strongest character. So like if the mage or if the Chronomancer gets too close to the battle and starts taking a lot of hits, they're going to go down really fast because they're not necessarily the greatest at taking the blows, but they can deal a lot of damage and kind of stay in the background and be sneaky that way. We've got the Shadow Blade, which is kind of your rogue class. It's also, as a Shadow Blade, you're going to be up in the fray as well. But rather than just standing and taking the hits like you would see in the Time Warrior, They're more stealthy, they're more agile. So you kind of dart into the battle and maybe backstab something and do a bunch of damage, and then dart back out to get out of the fight before you take damage. And so it's more of a like high dexterity sort of class. Also primarily melee based though. And then there's the Quantum Fixer, which is our healer class, which it's not your typical healer class. It's a little bit more like Dungeons and Dragons cleric, if you're familiar with that, where you do have heals and you're healing your team and responsible kind of for keeping their health points up. But they can also take some hits, and they have a big hammer and melee abilities. They can get into the fray and start doing some decent damage if they need to.
So for those of us who aren't familiar with the kind of analogy that you drew, that comparison, would you say that like in Saving Private Ryan, this is like or one of these army movies? It's the medic that's running around healing.
Exactly. Medic is, if you're familiar with Battlefield or Call of Duty or something like that, the medic is definitely close to the fixer. Although the fixer is a little bit more offensive than somebody like a medic in the traditional armed services isn't typically firing his gun, right? But the fixer is definitely can be offensive and has some offensively targeted abilities. But his primary focus is keeping the rest of the team alive. Or bringing them back if they kind of get knocked down into a almost dead state. They can come and kind of resurrect them. Each of these classes have different abilities that they can activate. So the fixer obviously can heal his friends, give them life back, the equivalent of applying a med pack or whatever. The Chronomancer is casting spells or using abilities from a distance that do lots of damage or ensnare a bunch of the enemies or something like that. The Shadow Blade, like I said, has a lot of high mobility abilities on him. So there's like a dash attack where he can leap through enemies. He can turn himself invisible and kind of sneak around the battle and get behind the enemy lines and then do a lot of damage from behind. And then the Time Warrior has like blocking abilities as well as like crowd control abilities. So he can kind of taunt the enemies nearby and make all of them focus on him. Which brings the focus off of his teammates. So you want to keep the healer alive. You want to keep the Chronomancer alive. He can taunt and actually kind of bring the enemies on himself and manage who in the group is taking damage a little bit. And that's kind of a core part of this kind of combat where everybody is playing a part and you kind of need everybody. The tank or the Time Warrior can't stay up for very long if somebody isn't healing him, but the Chronomancer and the Fixer can't take a lot of damage either. So if the Time Warrior goes down and all the enemies start focusing on the Fixer or the Chronomancer, they're going to go down really fast. So you kind of have to have a synergistic relationship between all the classes.
Guys, I'm also curious if you're watching this, just which class, what sounds interesting to you? What would you like to do? Let us know in the comments below too. Just curious who's watching and what kind of gamer you are. So how much of the game is actually NFT based, right? So if you look at something like Star Atlas, Michael, the CEO, is telling me that everything in the game is NFT. The panels on spaceships, the windows, the steering wheels. So if you're going to battle and your spaceship gets exploded, the enemy can go and collect all these NFTs that are essentially part of the ship, and then go and sell those or reuse those, whatever. That's pretty ambitious and crazy, but it's amazing at the same time. How much of the game is blockchain integrated?
So we're taking I guess a more measured approach there. So we've observed lots of other games in the past. I think the best example is Diablo 3, where Diablo 3 is not a blockchain game, but they launched the game with a real money auction house where people could spend US dollars or whatever, real currency in order to trade in-game items. And that tends to be very detrimental to the fun of the actual game, right? People call that pay to win. And the reason for that is, you get your typical 12 to 18-year-old gamer that's in there putting hundreds of hours into the game because they love it and they're doing their best to earn the best gear. But the really good gear is really rare. So even if you're a really good player and you're playing a lot, you might not have the best gear. So you're putting all your effort into this and you're having a good time along the way, and you're kind of making incremental upgrades to yourself and getting better loot as you play. But then all of a sudden you log into the game and there's this level 1 character that has the best game or best gear in the game because they dropped $5 on the auction house or whatever, or $500, whatever it is. And you're sort of left in this situation where you don't feel good about the time you put into the game anymore. It's no longer fun, right? And it's not fun for the person that just dropped all that cash either, because they don't have to play the game. The whole part of the reason you play the game is to go earn that loot and make your character better. But if you can just kind of short circuit the whole process and come out of the gate with the best gear in the game, it might be fun for a little while as you can show it off, but it's not going to be the same sort of lasting entertainment value that you get from progressing through the game like it was meant to be progressed. So we've taken those learnings and really tried to apply them to Big Time in a way that I think is still pretty interesting. The gear that you get, the gear that's an NFT, or the items that are NFTs are never going to affect your power, your like direct stats in the game. So you can't, it doesn't matter how much money you spend, you're not going to be able to get like really amazing gear and just come in and be better than everybody else at the game without actually having earned that stuff by playing the game. So you may look really cool, right? Like you can pay a lot of money and have NFTs that make your sword look like it's made of molten lava and it's shooting flames, and every time you take a footstep it's leaving like burning footprints in the ground, and like when you attack you've got this crazy battle cry that plays that nobody else has, right? That stuff is awesome. We love that. You can definitely look amazing by purchasing these cosmetic NFTs and applying them to your character, but they're not going to make you able to go fight the end boss of the game. You still have to earn those kind of power building stats by actually playing. So I guess in addition to the cosmetic NFTs that I was just talking about, we also have a whole suite of NFTs that are related to the personal pocket universe, to the space NFTs that you can buy and upgrade.
Sorry, this is the question I wanted to ask you, was what's the difference between the personal pocket universe and the space? And I know, and I understand that you guys also have a public land sale coming up. I think it's December 10th, if that's still the date. Is that right, Ryan?
It should be around December 6th. So we'll have a final date very shortly. But a personal pocket universe is just kind of like a longer name for the space. Because and then the land is also like the space. Because in a lot of other games right now, they're all selling like land, but because kind of like our IP is like time and space, and also because ours is not grid based, but rather kind of like Lego blocks, then it made a lot more sense to call it space.
Yeah, so personal pocket universe is kind of like, to take the Lego analogy a little bit further, the PPU, your own personal pocket universe, is kind of like the entire, if you're building a Lego set, that's the entire tabletop that you're building your Lego set on. And then as you buy space NFTs, those are kind of like the pieces of the Lego set that you're buying and that you're snapping together. So, or another way to think about it is your PPU is the house, and the space NFTs are the rooms that you can put together to build the house. So the PPU is kind of like your whole area, and then you can buy. Yeah, go ahead.
So kind of coming back to what Ryan just said, does a PPU, is it taking up this is funny, but using the same way, is it taking up space in the game, or like plots essentially? This is, and then also, at the public land sale that's coming up, or we could call it personal space sale or personal PPU sale, or the sale that's coming up on the 6th, is that going to be a finite supply based on a grid kind of thing, or like how do we, I'm trying to conceptualize what this looks like in game.
It doesn't take up plots of land like Decentraland did. That your own PPU is kind of in your own alternate universe, hence the name. So you can build out as much as you want within your PPU as long as you have the NFTs that let you do that, right? So each building block that you're adding to the PPU is another NFT that you have to own in order to do that. And each NFT or each space NFT that you purchase is going to give you, a leg up in the play to earn part of the game, right? So that might just be upgrading your play to earn token ability, or it might, like I said, it might be giving you utility because you need this room that's the forge room, and then you have to attach a forge inside the forge room, and the forge is how you upgrade your NFTs or something like that, right? So it's like direct utility as well as just upgrading.
So what is being sold on the 6th? It's the space, or it's PPU, or that's the items that you were saying, the rooms and the house.
Space is the rooms. So that the PPU is kind of just like where you assemble these things. Everybody has a PPU. That's not, you don't buy one of those, but like you can go into your PPU, and by default, maybe it's just a big empty room. But if you want to make it cooler and give it, forges or something that's going to actually help you play to earn, then you have to have those space NFTs in order to connect them together and expand your PPU and make it better.
And how will part of this, I imagine from what you said earlier, is that you might put a storefront up there. You might have a cool room where you can have somebody else come forge your swords in your PPU because they don't have their own or whatever, and maybe you charge a service fee for that or something. How are people going to like stumble upon your PPU if it's not geographically located? Where like as a lot of these kind of metaverse projects or gaming projects that are selling land have a map laid out, and you kind of know that you're starting in the center, and so therefore I'm going to have visibility on all these prime location of real estate first. How will that work?
So there's kind of two ways that can happen. Where one is it could be, I think probably to start with, all that stuff will be, you can invite your friends into your PPU, or you can invite somebody that's online with you into your PPU. And in real terms, what that means is a portal opens, and then you and whoever else you want to go in through the portal with you. It's kind of like a town portal from Diablo, if you're familiar with that. So people can jump into the portal, and that takes them to your own personal Pocket Universe. We've kicked around ideas of having like permanent portals that live in the city somewhere, which would be more akin to a plot of land, but none of that is confirmed yet. And that if that happens, it'll probably be after the initial launch. So we're sort of exploring that stuff still. But yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think, and it's definitely something we're thinking about, but we need to be careful about what we say, I guess, because we haven't decided for sure how we're going to handle those things. But I think the safe thing to assume is, if you're in a guild or if you're in a party with your friends, they can invite you into their PPU and say, hey, come check this out. Or they can say, hey, I have a forge, you want to borrow it? You can jump into my PPU and I'll let you use it for a while. Or you can help me with crafting materials, and in return, I'll give you access to my forge. On
the sale on the 6th, is there going to be predefined items that people can buy? Like, if you're saying that, or how does that work? Give me some more. Let's use this house analogy. And so, from my understanding, the sale on the 6th, people are buying rooms or items that they could put in the house. So, if I'm going to go participate in this sale, or the public sale on the 6th, am I buying are they all essentially fungible? All these items, like there's no definition of what they're going to become, or are they going to get to pick? Like, this is a room, this is a forging thing, this is like a which dungeon? I don't know. Like, is there a definition at this point?
No, there will be different types of rooms for sure. So they'll have different sizes, different kind of utility afforded by the NFT themselves. So it's not just going to be like, it's not a fungible token. They're all a little bit different. Probably we'll announce more info on that as we go. But really, the idea is at least some of these NFTs will be completely unique, right? You might have a room in your PPU that nobody else in the world has because it's like got some cool, unique aspect to it. So aside from just the actual play to earn utility that it's adding, it's kind of a really cool feather in your cap where like you have this planet being eaten by the sun scene, and nobody else can have that except you. So that's like, you can have that in your PPU and let people come in and see it, but that's like the draw. And then you have your storefront on the way because people want to come check out the cool thing. So anyway, those are the sorts of things we want to explore. But I think for the sale coming up soon, there will be kind of like categories of what type of these rooms are. And you'll be able to kind of make that decision based on the information of the room itself in terms of how, like, I think if we're going to do small, medium, large, and, give you some more information about what sort of utility sockets are on that as well.
Yeah, so to kind of elaborate on that, right? The idea for the sale is it's going to be fungible to keep it simple. And then later on, there'll be kind of a reveal of like what kind of rarity and what kind of size that you have that you've been able to get for the space. So like, for example, like if you were to go to any other NFT drop, right? When you mint one, you have like an odds of like getting X rarity for all of these traits, right? And the same idea is for us, where effectively the more you mint, the higher chance that you have a very diversified set of space that kind of has a lot of interactions with each other. So the idea behind it was that like we would want to make it as fair as possible, mainly because we've seen like a lot of like NFT launches, they get front run or anything like that. So we wanted it to be inclusive to the community.
Is it going to be like a Dutch auction style, or how's it going to be performed?
It's going to be an auction style where the floor price is shown. So maybe kind of like Dutch auction, but not really.
So it's starting at a certain price and going up, or it starts high and goes down over time?
Starts at a low price and goes up.
I'm super interested. I want to ask you guys one more question. Like, where is Big Time in 5 to 10 years? Is it this like, is the goal to become this fully immersive kind of metaverse world where you can run around in your VR goggles and like chat with your buddies and have this like social experience and like kind of live there as sort of like an alternate universe, like life, or is it not that extreme? Can you guys give me this kind of picture of where it is in, let's say, 5-10 years from now?
10 years is a little harder, but I think in 5 years, really for Big Time, we plan to keep adding to it at basically as long as people are interested, right? So the game as it is right now will come out with kind of this semi-medieval theme to it. That's not meant to be how the game is going to be all the time. In fact, one of the things that we really love about Big Time and the fact that it plays on time travel and alternate universes and all this stuff is that we can we're planning on having multiple eras, multiple times that are available to play, and we'll kind of release more of those as real time goes on, where we might be in kind of medieval times to start with, and then the next season that we release will be like in the far future with laser rifles and completely different gameplay mechanics that are all unique to that timeshare, we call them. And then you come out of the far future and you go back to feudal Japan, except it's an alternate universe because one of the bad guys in the game is trying to take over feudal Japan. So there's like feudal Japan with ninja robots or something like that, where we can kind of keep things very interesting and make, add more really unique and cool lore and content to the game, which is something that's typically pretty difficult in longer winded universes, because you kind of like break yourself into jail with the intellectual property. You can take like, I don't know, World of Warcraft is a good example where they did amazing things with the lore in that game, but it's still, everything has to be fitting within the World of Warcraft universe. You don't see tanks and laser rifles and whatever stealth bombers in World of Warcraft because at its core it's a fantasy game. But Big Time isn't pretending to be a fantasy game necessarily. It's going to have lots of expansion capability, and we really would love to keep that going for in the indefinite future. Keep adding cool stuff, keep adding mechanics, keep adding. And when I say mechanic, I don't just mean like, oh, there's a new item or the guy looks a little bit different, but you might go to a timeshare that everything is underwater, so you have to swim everywhere, or the gravity is off, so everything is floating around, or stuff is completely different in wilds. That's the kind of thing that we want to experiment with, which you don't really see in games very often, usually because you kind of have to fit within the narrative that's been built from the beginning. So that's kind of the 5-year plan, is keep releasing content and seasons and make the game stay fresh and new forever, really. It's more of a games as a service approach rather than trying to get everything out from the start.
Is it being built in what gaming engine are you guys using?
We're using Unreal Engine 4, which, given that a bunch of us came from Epic Games, which makes Unreal Engine 4, it's not that big of a surprise. Yeah, a bunch of us actually worked on the engine back in the day, so yeah, it's what we know certainly, but I think it's the best tool for the job as well. And
then so a lot of people are promoting like Unreal Engine 5, things like that. Can you tell me a bit about why you're not using 5, or if you intend to?
We may very well switch to Unreal Engine 5 at some point, but we're not using it right now, frankly, because it's not ready. Nobody shipped a game on UE5 yet, including Epic. And kind of if you've shipped games on Unreal in the past, you quickly learn that you should wait until Epic ships something before you use it, because they're going to, during the process of shipping, you find a lot of problems, you fix a lot of bugs, and make a lot of improvements. And for a game like Big Time, there's not a really compelling reason to switch to UE5. We're not trying, we've got a very stylized art style. You can kind of see it in my background.
Yep.
That's not necessarily what UE5 is going for. They have some really amazing rendering technologies going on that for ultra realistic game scenes. And if we were trying to do ultra realistic, we'd probably be looking at switching to Unreal 5 a lot sooner. That being said, I wouldn't be surprised if it happened. If it doesn't, I'd be surprised if it doesn't happen before very long. But that's not our priority at the moment.
Will this be a browser-based game, a downloadable game? Will it be mobile ready?
To start with, it'll be a downloadable game for Windows, for the PC. That's largely because of the friendliness, or I should say the lack of friendliness to crypto by a lot of the other players in the app space, right? Like Apple, Google, both are not very friendly to crypto right now. So it's kind of difficult to get a mobile game with really meaningful crypto interactions going, unless you want to sideload it or something like that. I think that's going to change. And similarly for game consoles, Windows, or rather Microsoft and Sony are the big players there. And neither of them are particularly interested in jumping into crypto right yet. But I think given a year or two, I wouldn't be surprised if that all changes. And when that does change, we'll be definitely looking to take big time to all the platforms that are willing to have it. So PC is just kind of the open platform that we have access to for the moment, and it's a good jumping off.
All right, guys, we're gonna wrap this up. Thank you for coming on, Matt and Ryan. I appreciate your time. Everybody that's watching, again, let us know in the comments below. What a chance to win this early access pass, which I think is gonna be incredibly valuable. And yeah, we'll see you guys later.
Awesome. Yeah, it was good to meet you.
Pleasure, Matt.